season in review videos continue on today with the Boston Bruins this time around. And I'm a little bit surprised, honestly, that I'm making this video this early in the series. I know it's the Stanley Cup final right now, but I am surprised that I'm making this video like this early in the series than we usually do, because Boston usually they may not be like a team that goes far in the playoffs all the time, but they usually at the very least make the playoffs, and they don't usually finish fifth worst in the NHL. You don't typically see that from the Boston Bruins, but they did this year, and the fall from grace has kind of been wild. You look at the last 2 years before this year, they were pretty decent. In 22-23, they were the best team in the league ever. 65-12-5 with 135 points. They were first in the NHL. They broke the wins record. They broke the points record. And they lost in round one to the Florida Panthers. That was the best team that this Bruins roster would have. A lot of those guys left. The following year, they were better, but they definitely weren't that good. 47, 20, and 15 for 109 points. They are 7th in the NHL, and they lost in round two to, you guessed it, the Florida Panthers. And again, it was a fun year, I will say that, but it was a year where the Bruins definitely took a step backwards. I feel like their depth and their overall offense and defense got a little bit worse on paper. They relied on Jeremy Swayman a lot to kind of carry the workload, and as a result, they make a ton of moves in that offseason. They trade away Linus Ullmark. They sign Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, amongst a couple of others. And then the whole debacle with Jeremy Swayman goes down, where he doesn't sign until like 3 or 4 days before the start of the regular season. It was a whole thing, and it all amounted to what was going to be and what did become a drama-filled and just a disastrous season from the Boston Bruins. They went 33, 39, and 10 for 76 points. They were 28th in the NHL. They scored 222 goals, allowed 272 for a minus 50 difference. Again, it feels weird because I've been making content for 5.5 years and watching hockey for almost 10 years at that. And seeing, the Boston Bruins, they've made the playoffs basically every single year that I've been watching hockey, and seeing them not make it this year was just really weird. It felt really weird to me, and I still really can't really process it to this day, honestly. They had a 20-14-7 record at home, so they were actually not that bad at home, but they had a 13-25-3 record on the road. They scored an average of 2.71 goals for per game, which is 27th, and they allowed an average of 3.31, which is 26th. So both of their numbers there were just not good enough. They weren't good numbers to boost the Bruins into the playoffs this year, and obviously things kind of took a turn for the worst. Honestly, though, I am going to say this. At the trade deadline, they really weren't that far out, but then Don Sweeney decided they're going to sell. They're going to sell the team and trade away Marchand and Carlo and Coyle and whoever else. They decided to move on from Trent Frederick as well. And then they kind of fell off a cliff. But beforehand, they were close. They really weren't that far away. They also had a 15.2 power play percentage, which was 29th, which is surprising considering the fact of how decent the team on paper was at the time. And then they had a 76.3 penalty kill percentage, which was ranked 24th. So overall, the Bruins just had really bad stats all around. All of them were just not good. And you can't make the playoffs when all your numbers are like bottom 5, bottom 10. It's just not good enough, simply being put. And overall, again, I'm going to say this one more time. They were right there at the trade deadline, but then they decided to sell everybody. And now they just look like they had a horrible year. But it wasn't that terrible. It was just a very inconsistent year from this Bruins team. Now, one player who was consistent and deserves a ton of flowers for how this season went is David Pastrnak. 82 games played, 43 goals, which is first on the team, 63 assists, which is first on the team, and 106 points, which is first on the team. So, again, Pastrnak just looked phenomenal this year, and there's really no doubt about it. He looked incredible this year for the Boston Bruins, and I think anybody who says otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. He was unreal. He was getting Hart consideration at points. Like, honestly, if the Bruins made the playoffs, I think Pastrnak would have gotten hard consideration. Like, he had an incredible year on such a inconsistently bad team. It's, like, actually insane how good Pastrnak was this past year. And there's a lot of things you can put the fault on. Pasta's not one of them. I think he might be the only person you don't have to blame. Now, another guy that I thought was good was Morgan Geekie, who took a big step this year. 77 games played, 33 goals, 24 assists for 57 points. We were talking about Geekie a lot when he was with Seattle and a couple other teams where he wasn't really panning out to the level we thought he was going to. And this year, I mean, again, it was a bad Bruins team, but he got a lot more ice time than he would have otherwise. He scored 30 goals, essentially, had a 60-point year. I think that's good for somebody like him, and that bodes well for him moving on in the future. Again, there weren't a lot of bright spots, but Geekie certainly was one of them, in my opinion. Elias Lindholm, 82 games played, 17 goals, 30 assists for 47 points there. He was third in scoring. Lindholm had a decent year. Again, I think I would like more out of somebody like him who they paid a ton of money to work with. But again, I think Lindholm just isn't the same player that he was with Calgary and through that time with Vancouver. He just isn't the same player. I feel like a lot of it was boosted by, or I should say his point numbers were boosted by Johnny Gaudreau, rest in peace. And since then, he just hasn't really been able to do a whole lot on by himself. So that's kind of how I look at Lindholm, but maybe next year is better. Pavel Zacha, 82 games played, 14 goals, 33 assists, 47 points. Not the best year from Zacha, but I still really like Zacha. I think he's a great player, and I'm excited for what the future holds for a guy like him. And he's probably going to be the second or third line center, depending on how they want to move things next year. And then Casey Middlestat, a little bit of an asterisk. He did not have all of his points with the Bruins. It was with the Avalanche as well. 81 games played, 15 goals, 25 assists for 40 points this past year with the Bruins as well. Middlestat, I think, has the potential to be a good third-line center with Boston. It wasn't a bad move acquiring him. And I think overall it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to be able to do here in a full season with Boston next year. Next up, Mason Lohrei, who had a rough year. He had the worst plus-minus in the entire NHL, which is a bummer because I actually really like Lohrei, and I think he can still be a good defenseman. Like, I remember 2 years ago, he was pretty damn good, but now he's kind of had a little bit of a fall from grace, I guess, and this year was not a good year whatsoever. 77 games played, 5 goals, 28 assists for 33 points this past year. Just a rough year all around. It was not a good season from him. I think next year will be better, but again, I think it's his full sophomore year, I would say. Not great. It was not great. Nikita Zadorov, 81 games played, 4 goals, 18 assists, 22 points. I remember at the beginning of the season, Zadorov was getting like penalties in every single game. Like, you could almost guarantee that whenever a game was going on, Zadorov was gonna take a penalty. Like, it was literally like a guarantee. I think the betting odds at the time were just hilarious. But yeah, I think that experiment didn't work out as good as we thought it was going to either. I think it definitely could have been better. He wasn't like horrendous, but even still, like, it needed to be better than what it was this past year. Cole Koepke, and that you can see the team was not that great post-deadline. 73 games played, 10 goals, 7 assists, 17 points. That's your fourth line depth right there. I thought he was pretty decent at the start of the season, but then things kind of tampered off for him, and the offense low-key dried up, and, you know, as a result, that fourth line, that looked pretty decent, and it still is not that bad. Just didn't work out in the second half of the year. And then Andrew Peeke was 10th in scoring. I'm pretty sure he was with the team all year. 76 games played, 1 goal, 16 assists for 17 points as well this past year. Again, just overall wrapping it up, it was a rough season in terms of scoring for the Bruins. Outside of like Pastrnak and Geekie, I would say most of this team was a disappointment, to be honest with you. I do want to give a shout out, though, to Charlie McAvoy, who I think I missed out on here. 50 games played, 7 goals, 16 assists for 23 points. I believe I just skipped over him by accident. I think I realized that. McAvoy missed a ton of time. I think him and Lindholm, Hampus Lindholm, not being on the team for a lot of the year really hurt things for the Bruins. And I think if you can get those two guys back fully healthy next season, I'm not saying they make the playoffs, but they're definitely better than they were this past year. Like, I think, again, like, I'm going to be saying that a lot throughout this video, but I think it's the honest truth. Now, You look at the goaltenders, Jeremy Swayman, who had a very rough year. And we said it at the beginning of the year. We said it midway through the season. We said it so much on the podcast and things like that. We said that Swayman, and with other goaltenders especially, you miss training camp, it really affects you. It really affects you and your like long-term play in the league that season, because you are essentially a step back from everybody else. You have to practice, you have to learn everything on the go. You don't get like a week or two to really condition yourself and practice, and you don't have those preseason games to get ready for and kind of get warmed up in. No, you just have to jump right into regular season hockey where again, you can clearly tell it's not like intense playoff hockey a lot of the time, but even still it's more than preseason. It affects you, and it really affected Swayman this year. Again, 22, 29, and 7, a 3.11 and a .892. I don't know if I said those already, but again, it was a rough year from him. And I think that next year will be better with him getting training camp, but just overall, it did not bode well for him in his overall play this past year. Younes Corpusalo, 11, 10, and 3, a 2.90 and a .893. He wasn't that terrible. I know his numbers don't look that great, but he was definitely better than Swayman for points. But again, he's not a starting goaltender. I don't think I'm rustling any feathers there saying that. But yeah, overall, I mean, again, you can look at Olmark too. Like, you see how Olmark is doing in Ottawa, and then you look at how Corpusalo and Swayman are. It doesn't look good. It did not look good at all for Don Sweeney. All right, the trades that they made, and honestly, these trades probably saved their season. I'm not going to lie, and it probably saved Don Sweeney's job, more importantly. So the first one they made was trading Trent Frederick, Max Jones, and Peter Hauser to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for Max Wanner, a 2025 second round pick, and a 2026 fourth round pick. I love what Edmonton did with this move. Frederick's been really good on their team. Obviously, they're in the Stanley Cup Finals, as you can tell with that jersey in the back. They've been great. He's been great as a good third, fourth line guy. As for Boston, you get a solid, okay prospect in Wanner. I don't know a ton about him. You got a second round pick, which isn't bad. I didn't think it was that terrible. It's a good win there for like a depth player, honestly. They also made a trade where they traded Justin Brazeau to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for Marat Kuznetsov, Jacob Lauko. Yes, he's coming back, and a 2026 sixth round pick. Nothing too big there. Kuznetsov really struggled in the NHL this past year. He actually had some hope of becoming something. I'm not too sure what exactly bodes with that anymore, but Kuznetsov, we'll see how he is next year, maybe in a more full-time role. They also traded Charlie Coyle and a 26 fifth-round pick to Colorado in exchange for Casey Middlestat, William Zellers, and a 25 second. Again, Middlestat is solid. Zellers actually led the United States Hockey League in scoring this past year, so you may have gotten an exciting prospect there who might be a couple of years away, but he looks somewhat exciting. And then a second round pick there as well never hurts. They also acquired Fraser Minton, a 26 first round pick, and a 2025 fourth round pick from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Brandon Carlo. Again, they were busy at the trade deadline. They made a ton of moves. And again, I'm going to say it once more. They were pretty much right there at the trade deadline. They were like 3 or 4 points back. They make all these moves and the team falls off a cliff. But yeah, overall, like, I thought that looked like a really good deal. Minton is not as good as Leaf fans profile him to be, but he's still going to be pretty decent. And then a first round pick in next year's stacked draft, and who knows where Toronto will be next year. It's a good move for sure. But overall, I think that they made some pretty damn good moves at this deadline. They also traded Brad Marchand to Florida in exchange for a first round pick in 2027. So again, like, you could have gotten more for Marchand, but Marchand wanted to go to Florida, and you respect your longtime player's wishes. He's like the longest tenured Boston Bruin on this team. You have to respect your wishes, or his wishes, that being, and you traded him away. I think that is totally fine. At the time, I was a bit harsher on it because I'm like, all right, you could have gotten way more than a conditional second for Brad Marchand elsewhere, but he wanted to go to Florida, and I understand that. That was totally respectful. And I don't really have any hate for it behind Don Sweeney. And overall, I thought they made good moves at the deadline. And again, as I said, it saved Don Sweeney's job. To look into the American Hockey League, where the Providence Bruins have been making some moves. They went 41-23, 5-3 this past year. They had 90 points. They were 8th in the NHL. They defeated Springford in the first round 3-2. Then they actually went right up there with the Charlotte Checkers into Game 5. They didn't win Game 5, but they went right into there, forced a Game 5. And that's the team that has come closest to beating the Checkers in the playoffs right now. Like, they sweeped Hershey, the defending Cup champions. They are up 2-0 on Laval right now. Like, the Bruins came the closest, and I think that's something you could take from this overall team with this Providence Bruins roster. And they had a pretty decent team, I'm not going to lie. They had Georgi Merkulov, 59 games played, 15 goals, 39 assists for 54 points. Again, if you guys have been following the prospect pool reviews for the last couple of years, we've been talking about Merkulov plenty. Vinny Lettieri, 47 games played, 21 goals, 29 assists, 50 points. Tyler Pitlick, what a name there. 59 games played, 21 goals, 25 assists, 46 points. Patrick Brown, this is like a legendary roster. 56 games played, 17 goals, 29 assists, 46 points. And then Riley Tuft, 58 games played, 21 goals, 21 assists for 42 points there as well. So, again, a decent roster there in Providence. They made some good moves and did pretty damn well this past year. I think there's some credit to take from that, and I think you can't really be upset with what you saw. And overall, I'm very happy with how the Bruins in the AHL played, not the NHL. Now, you look at the pipeline. The pipeline is not that great, I'm not going to lie to you. However, it is definitely better than it was last year. You have Fabian Liesel, who's been their number one guy for like 10 years. Not that long, but 52 games played, 11 goals, 23 assists for 34 points. He played 12 games in the NHL this past year, so you're kind of starting to talk about, is he really a prospect anymore? I think it's possible next year, depending on who runs this team, in the coaching role that being, because they still haven't hired a coach. They may control, like how long Liesel's up. He might not be a prospect anymore. Next year might be his like full-time rookie year. Dean Letourneau, this is not looking good. 36 games played, 3 assists in Boston College. Not ideal. Not ideal whatsoever for a guy like him. He's going from high school hockey to college hockey. He was drafted in the first round. We said it when he was drafted by the Bruins. He's a project. He's going to be somebody who's going to take a little bit to pan out, but so far it's really not looking that great. I'm not going to lie to you. He didn't even score a goal. That's like actually kind of wild to think. But again, like maybe next year is better for him. Maybe he can improve from that. But overall, I'm not so sure, honestly. We'll have to see. Fraser Min, who spent time in the AHL this past year, also played in the NHL. 37 games played, 9 goals, 11 assists for 20 points, combined in Toronto Marlies and Providence. He played 21 games in the NHL this past year, so I think that's a reason why his numbers are a little bit lower than, as projected, because he actually played with Boston in the NHL and with Toronto. So honestly, he's been up in the NHL. He could be a full-time NHLer next year. Who knows? And then Brandon Bussey, one of the goalies here. I think this is the first goalie we've ever talked about in the pipeline. 33 games played, 15, 14, and 3, a 2.77 and a .907. Good numbers in Providence. I think, again, he's somebody who actually has a decent future coming up. We'll have to see what he becomes. And then William Zellers from the United States Hockey League, 52 games played, 44 goals, 27 assists for 71 points. Again, as I said, he led the USHL in scoring this past year, so give a lot of credit there to Zellers for what he did. The draft capital for Boston. It's not as good as it will be in a couple of years, but they still got some assets. They have a first in this year's draft, which is their own. It's 7th overall. They have 2 seconds, which is St. Louis and Carolinas. They have a third, a 4th, which belongs to Philly, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th. So they do have, I feel like, more capital than usual. And I think overall, getting that first-round pick, which is high, they can use that and get somebody pretty decent. So it makes me a little bit excited there for what is to come with the Bruins and that overall future. Now, your UFAs and RFAs are very intriguing as well. start out with the UFAs. You have Cole Koep, Riley Tuft, Tyler Pitlick, Henry Yokiharu, and Parker Wotherspoon. So no really big names there. I would imagine they keep around Pitlick and Tuft just so you can have AHL depth. I would imagine they keep around Koep too. Yokiharu, we'll have to see. He was a deadline acquisition that I didn't mention. And then Wotherspoon, I don't really know. Like, again, like these are some guys who are like depth NHLers, borderline AHLers. Why not? I mean, like, it doesn't really matter. I would say this year, there's a lot less names of guys who are like really big. RFAs, though, you have Morgan Geeky, Johnny Beecher, Marat Kuznetsov, Jacob Laukrow, and Mason Lohrei. So some good names there overall in terms of the RFAs. I think Geeky could get a pretty sizable contract. Nothing too huge, but could still get something. Johnny Beecher's looking pretty damn good. He's going to need to get something as well. Kuznetsov, we'll see what he gets. And then for the rest of the guys, like Lohrei, I'm wondering what he's going to be. He might be a bridge deal, honestly. But yeah, that is your season in review for the Boston Bruins. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe down below. And I will see you guys in the next video.